Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, and this is Deep Work Fast. And this week, when you're watching this, I actually will be on the Big Island. So, right now, I'm on the Big Island of Hawaii. I am with a cohort of amazing women at an intensive where they are taking it to the next level, 2024. You can come with me. Big Island, Montana, Costa Rica, Tulum, all of those places for individuals, leaders, and teams. So, if you don't know, we do that. We do that. Anyway, this week for Deep Work Fast, I want to talk to you about saying no, and specifically saying no when you are feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, overworked. Common conversation that I'm having with you and other people all the time, and yet you're still saying yes to things, either enthusiastically or begrudgingly, but you're saying yes, so you're still taking on more. And so when I'm coaching people, oftentimes I'm having conversations with them on a regular basis, either weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, whatever. So if they keep saying to me, I'm overworked, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, and yet the pile is still, literally or figuratively, the pile is still growing, it's time for us to say time out and start thinking about this. So this week I wrote a blog about this, and I want to talk you through a few ways to think about this so that hopefully you can say no more often, appropriately, of course. So first of all, you need to step back and be honest with yourself about why, if you're exhausted, overworked, and feeling resentful or just feeling completely depleted, you are still saying yes to things. That could be socially, or it could actually be work in your home or in your actual workplace. There's reasons people do that. And so I want to just slow down here a minute and present them to you so that you can be honest with yourself about maybe why you're doing it. First of all, some people have FOMO. So you need to realize if you're one of those people, like fear of missing out. People have that at work, right? I know people who want to be in every meeting, right? They don't want to miss the conversations. They don't want to be the last to know. And so that might be appropriate for your job. You might feel like you need to do that to stay on top of things. I'm not going to argue about whether that's true or not. I'm just going to always say, well, time out. Do you have to do so much? Like, do you have to say yes to everything? So really, what are you missing out on? And is that real? Or is that just a story that you have? So you should know that about yourself. Socially, I know people who are the same, like they're exhausted. I'm going to stay home. I'm not going out this weekend. I want nothing to do with socializing with people. And then the next thing I know, they're out because they can't say no. They're afraid that something good's going to happen without them. And so they sacrifice themselves when they're tired, depleted, exhausted. Do I have to say the list again? And they say yes anyway. So first reason is FOMO. Second reason is you feel obligated. Now, obligated, there's two kinds, right? There is the obligated that is real because you have a job and you are obligated to do certain things because it's your responsibility. Your role has accountability to it for a list of things, probably bigger than the one on paper, that you actually are obligated to do. Or there's obligations that you also are supposed to do because you committed to people. You made an agreement that you are going to do something. So that's when I call category A obligated. Category 2 obligated, though, sometimes people tell me lots of stories, so you cannot tell me this isn't true, are doing things that they're not obligated to do. Not your job. This could be at home or at work. It's someone else's thing, but because the other people aren't doing it, you might want to control an outcome or you want the thing done, so you're just going to do it for them. And by the way, for a lot of people, this is a really big category of things. So if you are overwhelmed, overworked, exhausted, all of those things, you might want to look at that category. What all the things you do that aren't actually yours to do. They could be delegated. We're going to talk about that in a minute. There's another category, though, of things that people do, and this might sting, but I need you to think about it. I need you to be super real and honest with yourself. So there are people, it could be you, who overwork themselves, and even though they're overwhelmed, they continue to do it in time and energy and effort because they secretly, secretly, that means they're not admitting it, right? It's like their own little secret. They like to overwork. Now, there's reasons people do that. Some people are workaholics and overwork and spend too much time on things, even if they don't need to, because they are trying to escape from something else. On another day, I'm going to devote a whole deep work fast to this, because I find out about this every time I do a deep dive into this topic with people that I coach one-on-one in safe environments. So I'm not going to expose anybody, but it's a thing. Miserable in their marriage, miserable in general in their life, afraid, paranoid about losing their job, maybe feeling like they're not as important anymore. And so what do? They foot on the gas because they think more effort, and if I work longer hours and I do a lot of activity, it's going to make me look and feel valuable at work, and it's also going to be a great excuse for me not to have to spend time doing the things that I'm trying to avoid. So it is a thing. If it's you, get honest with yourself. Yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, the last one is that there are people, and you might be one of them, who are afraid to say no. That sometimes is adjacent to people pleasing. Now, I will tell you, in the power dynamics of work, being afraid to say no sometimes is appropriate, right? Like, I don't want you to be insubordinate. I don't want you to say no to your boss. I don't want you to say no to things that, like I said, you're obligated to do based on your role and in your job. But some people are asked to do things that are out of scope of their job role, and they are still afraid to say no. I do a lot of coaching on this, like what is the best way to say no when executives and other people in power are delegating things to you. And so even though it's not your job, I'm afraid to say no because there's a whole bunch of things that could happen. Everything from retaliation to just kind of being kicked out of the inner crowd or losing favor with someone, right? There's a whole bunch of reasons people get afraid to say no. By the way, this happens in people's home situations too, in their families. Sometimes you have taken on too much and you're fulfilling multiple roles that are inappropriate, and you are afraid to say no because it will cause conflict that you don't want to deal with. So these are all the reasons that when I start to dig in with people, I find out why they keep saying yes to things when they want to say no. So I want you also to note, and I don't know where the research is, but I know I read it somewhere. I think it was on a LinkedIn. I'm going to find it if I can and post it here, that 50% or more, I actually wrote it down, 50% or more of the efforts that most people are putting out in relation to work, that is, could be delegated to someone else, deferred. In other words, it's not that actually urgent right now. You might get all this energy and someone needs it immediately, and that's not really true. It's called false urgency. So it could be delegated, it could be deferred, or it could be deflected. It doesn't have to happen at all. And I have to tell you, I find that all the time in work environments where, like I said, there's a lot of activity. There are a lot of processes with lots of steps, maybe steps that were useful in the past when those processes were a little bit more manual or the tech wasn't the same, and those things still exist. And so that's a really great example for you to think about of things that maybe could be just taken away if we rethought a process. But you in your job could still be doing all those things, even though you know rationally and the other people know around you that 6 of the 10 steps, we don't even need them anymore. We're just still doing it. So 50% of the things, 50% of the things, guys, that's a big number. So I'm often like, wow, delegated, deferred, deflected. Remember that. I didn't make that up, by the way, but I like it because hopefully you will remember it. Delegated, deflected, deferred. Okay. The only way to do that, though, is if you have, really taken an audit of the things that you are using your time and energy on and what is exhausting you and overwhelming you the most. So I would say this isn't something that you should knee jerk, specifically if it's related to work in your home or at work, right? Because that stuff is getting done. And if you've been doing it for a long time, it creates expectations. So I do want you to think through this in a meaningful way so that any change you make is sustainable, right? I don't want you to just try something and then have it backfire on you and then you get more work, or I don't know what happens. Maybe it's conflict that you don't want. We don't need that. Okay. If you decide or get to the point where you are going to say no, I do want to talk with you about how you do that, because what I find is that if you are not great at saying no, starting to say no in the beginning of that process, like doing it more, just like setting boundaries, they're similar, it's going to feel awkward. And with some people, you might be afraid to not only say no to them, you're going to be afraid of what happens afterwards if you don't handle it correctly. So I don't want you to be like abrupt and reckless with this. I do want you to think about it. In my blog, by the way, which is linked to this, I actually scripted out some things, because sometimes in coaching I have to do that with people. I have to actually talk through the situation and say, oh, no, don't just say no. That might not go over well. Instead, you need to do a few things. So I thought I would teach you those things too. When you are ready to say no to things, you want to either delegate it, deflect it, right? Defer it. It is important that you are first and foremost genuine, right? You don't want to say no when you've been saying yes to things. Your first few times, I don't want you to lie about it. You don't need to lie. You don't need to make up an excuse for saying no. And you might feel like you need to do that if you're not used to doing it, right? Like you might feel, oh God, if I just tell them that the reason I'm doing this is because I'm overwhelmed, then people at work are going to think I'm weak or I can't do my job. Don't want that to happen. And in my home, most people are probably going to roll their eyes at me, right? So we make stuff up instead. Don't do that. I want you to stay genuine to yourself. I want you to be okay saying, I don't want to take on anymore right now. I got enough to do. I want to do all this stuff well. And so if someone who is higher up than you, right, in an organization, for instance, comes and wants to give you more, I don't want you to just flat no to them. I do want you to say, thank you for thinking of me. I like doing work with you. And right now, I can't get it done at my best. And so let's find someone else who's going to do that. That's that delegation piece. So delegation can happen even if you are not, like maybe you don't have a team or you don't have a whole bunch of people sitting there waiting for you to hand out work to them. You can still actually delegate it to someone else who has the skill and the ability to do that. Now, some of you are saying, oh, but there's nobody at my work who can do what I do. I hear that a lot. I would love to believe that every person watching this, myself included sometimes, that we can't be replaced. But in most cases, that's not actually true. If 50% of the stuff that we're doing can either be delegated, deferred, or deflected, I promise you, the 1, 2, 3, 10 times you decide you're not going to do it yourself and that you're going to help find someone else to do it, it's going to be fine. And if you start actually making these choices, you start saying no more, you start having more boundaries, you start being maybe more intentional about what you do take on and what you don't, you'll be less overwhelmed, you'll be less overworked, you'll be less stressed, resentful, and all the other things that happen. And you could actually help your workplace. You could actually help your home. Now, in some of my other ones, I've talked about that. In the home, I say to people all the time, stop over-functioning and start teaching your children and your spouse or other people to be self-sufficient. Don't be a martyr. Don't take on all this stuff and then whine to me in coaching all the time about how overwhelmed you are. You are empowered. I am today advocating with you for you so that you can start thinking about things differently. So again, I'm going to say the annoying DDD so that you remember it. 50% or more of what you are doing and you are feeling overwhelmed can be delegated, deferred, or deflected. 50%. Now just think about that. If 50% of your time and the things that you do at home and work could go to someone else or just not be done or can wait, what would you do with that time and energy and effort? So that's all for today. I want you to really, really dig into this. Please don't take it lightly, because I don't take lightly you being your best at home and at work. So this is Deep Work Fast. I will be back next week. I will also still be on the Big Island because that intensive is 10 days long. So my next one will also be pre-recorded, and I can't wait because I will remind you again, aloha, of where I am. And I appreciate all of you, and thanks for your support. Okay, bye. Oh, get the blog. Don't forget to download the blog. You need that, okay? Just say no. No more overwhelm. Bye.